So I can start whenever I want. Sounds on? Sounds on too. Okay. All right. So let's get going. So good morning, everyone. Welcome for those of you in the room, and for the many people across the system who are joining us. Welcome and Happy New Year. Happy 2017. Welcome to our first town hall of 2017, where the theme today will be innovation. We thought that we'd put together an agenda today that talks about what we're doing across the system around innovation, some of the foundations that the CIOs have been talking about to support the innovation coming out of our campuses, our health systems, and our different institutes across the university. So as we go through today's agenda, we've got really three topics and presenters. I'm going to start off talking a little bit about the CIO agenda around innovation and some of the things that we've been talking about and how we're trying to support it across the system. We have a guest speaker coming in from UCSF, Dr. Laura Esserman, who is one of our most innovative people in terms of use of technology, in her case, to improve the quality of medical services, and she's a breast oncologist who I know you'll enjoy hearing from today. And then we have one of our CIOs, Gabe Yotzi of A&R, who will talk about really engagement and collaboration. Again, this is a foundational piece of how we as a IT community of close to 7,000 professionals really support each other. Okay? So unfortunately, you're going to have to deal with me for a couple of more minutes. So I'm going to kick off, and I'm really going to talk about something as we've been talking about a community of 7,000 people. What does that mean, and what are we capable of as a university, as an IT function, in support of the mission? And the mission for us, it evolves around students. It revolves around patients. It revolves around our faculty and the research that they do. And it evolves around all of us as employees of the university. And as we've talked about our role, and if you talk to your CIOs, which I know many of you get a chance to interact with your CIOs and people who manage budgets, IT is always in a situation where they're trying to establish and communicate the value of what they do to the university. And if that value is only around, what's in the budget, it becomes a very difficult conversation, because it's just about cost and how can what you do how can you make it cost less? And so CIOs have had to become very adept in communicating the value of what we do beyond just keeping the lights on and keeping basic services run. And so if you extrapolate that and think about 7,000 professionals and think about ourselves as a community and almost as an IT service company supporting our campuses, and our health systems and the employees of the university and the students' universities as customers, you start to think in a more innovative model, and you say, let's talk about our IT people not just as people here running a service, but as true innovators. And let's stop talking about just the efficiency of what we do and how can we do what we do today for cheaper, but how do we start to extrapolate and talk about the value creation we have, in our case, not in terms of a profit, but in terms around value around the mission, as it relates to student success, as it relates to patient outcomes, as it relates to faculty research portfolios. And so we've really kind of pushed the envelope moving from left to right across this picture. And what we found is some of our better concepts where I'll call it more mature, we're even moving to the extent of what we do so very well and is so innovative that we're starting to look at some of our peers within the UC as being, I call them intrapreneurs. So the entrepreneur is someone on the outside building a company. The intrapreneur is someone who's transforming from inside and actually taking that internal transformation and exposing it outside because it's a best practice. And we create these commercialization opportunities for us. And so we move from a model of, here I have a job to keep this service up and running, to being one that's I'm changing the service, to one that I'm actually being an entrepreneur, and even potential to build my own little thing, my own little internal company, my own little service group. And it's a model that we're trying to promote, and if you think of it at a scale that we're able to potentially do this up on, if a greater percentage of the activity moves from left to right, the transformational impact that can have around the university and its mission. And so the CIOs, as we've moved along this path, have talked about there's foundations that need to be in place to allow our people to do this. And again, this is an ongoing effort. It's not a here's the program and here's what it is. It's a learning process that we're all going through. And so you're going to have Gabe Yahtzee get up and talk about community building and why that's important from the standpoint of being able to collaborate and reach out into the vast expertise we have across the system. We've been experimenting and continue to around the concept of ideation spaces. So the concept of how do we give people the freedom and the space to be able to come up and brainstorm new ideas, to connect with other peers across the system, whether they're at your location or in other parts of the system, to create new ideas which roll into services. And so, for example, here at Office of the President, we have next week Innovation Week, where we're giving our staff incredible flexibility to essentially get outside the norm, get outside the box, and try to create new ideas and new concepts for what we do. We've invested into relationships and partnerships, both inside and outside the university, to pull people in to support the things that we don't normally do well, to help us think about business models, to help us do financial models for how we might scale things up to new levels, talk about service delivery models. If we're going to support outside customers, how do we do service level agreements? You know, these are things that we don't normally do, and we have to reach outside the organization for expertise of people who do this for a living. And what we found is that the UC brand brings incredible partnership from the venture capital community as example. And finally, competency building. Many of you have heard about the leadership program partnered with the Haas Business School, where we're taking some of our up-and-coming leaders and giving them opportunities to grow their leadership potential, giving them frameworks for how to think about innovation, how to think about collaboration, how to think about how to explain what we do to our business partners in terms of value propositions. So it's all around building this concept of greater opportunity across the system. This is a foundation. I like to say that it's a little bit of an ugly process. It's not a top-down. It's very consistent with the way that we work as a university, letting 1,000 flowers bloom. It's not top-down. It's more driven by you. I call it activist out. You know, it's not something that everyone has to do. You're invited to participate in the process, and we hope people take advantage of that invitation. And it's not heavily managed, so sometimes people say, Tom, why isn't there more structure around this? And I say, you know, it's a work-in process. You have to live with the organic nature, and that organic doesn't always grow the way we want it to grow. And so just in a couple of minutes, you know, some of the logos I have up here represent innovations that have come out of our university, connected to our IT community, or are spinning out of our university. And these are things that work. So people say, well, this is a nice idea. No, it's a reality, and we want to just expand upon it and see more of it happening. So think of Corelight, a spin-out company that came out of the Berkeley lab in this IT security space, now after its own venture capital. Think about Risk, Safety, and Solution Services, a Davis-based team that is now supporting all campuses and all health systems, and now taking on customers from other universities and other hospitals in the environmental health and safety space. A team that's expanding greatly, and again, using the support mechanisms to help them to how to sell better, how to think about a value proposition selling to people outside of our university. Crop Manage, an incredible innovation coming out of A&R that we're looking to turn into its own kind of startup company that allows us to build smart algorithms that allow the growers across the state to better manage water and fertilizer, which has both an economic impact but also an environmental impact. And think about what we're doing down for those in the health system in the southern part of the state, the collaboration between San Diego, Irvine, and I didn't put up, but I should have, Riverside on this in terms of the Epic EMR platform be extended from San Diego to include both Irvine and Riverside, so that not only is a shared IT platform, but also becomes the basis for a service offering that we could extend to other smaller healthcare institutions outside of the university in the state of California that help us with affiliations and partnerships to extend our healthcare reach. So these things are really happening today. The whole idea of the framework is to give us the opportunity to give more people an opportunity to participate and to make great things happen for the university. We tell these stories through the blog. So those who aren't subscribed to the blog, get there. We're up over 1,400 people now. We have 7,000, so we have a lot of growth potential. Tell your colleagues about it, get them on here, because this is the story of us, of the things that we do, the value to create, the cool stuff you want to be able to talk to your peers about. This is where we tell it. So with that, I want to end this and move to our next speaker, I'd like to introduce really a very esteemed guest who I'm so glad we're able to bring in today, Dr. Laura Esserman of UCSF. I've had the privilege of working with Dr. Esserman over the last 2 years. And anyone who Laura touches you can't help but be enthused and inspired by what she does. I could spend her entire time talking about her accomplishments and accolades, but I'm just going to talk about a few of the main ones. She attended Harvard. She did her medical school and residency at Stanford. While she was there, she also got an MBA, and then she joined UCSF in the early 90s. She's a premier surgeon and breast cancer oncology specialist. And most recently, in 2016, she was recognized as being one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. Here we're talking about a person who's had tremendous impact on the lives of patients, who brings incredible innovation of ideas in terms of how healthcare needs to be transformed and improved for the benefit of patients. And IT has always been a key part of how she sees and the use of information and how she sees healthcare improving. And really welcome her for the opportunity for her to talk to our community. So Laura, thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. So honestly, I was very inspired by, I was recruited to go to business school by Alan Enthoven back in the late 80s, before people really realized there was going to be, that business was going to be such an important part of healthcare delivery. And it wasn't something I ever anticipated doing, and sort of couldn't quite even imagine myself doing it. But that's what happens when you have a very persistent person. I'm one of those, but Alan Enthoven was more persistent than me. And he said, I want you to come to business school to learn about the tools of modern management and figure out how to change healthcare. This is something that he had worked on for decades, trying to change healthcare. And it was there that I got the bug in thinking about how to make change. And I honestly believe that a lot of the problem for us in medicine is that physicians and scientists have two blocks in this way. Number one, they don't really accept that actually medicine and science is a business. It's actually big business. And like any other business, we're driven by the same things that every other business is really driven by. We're not special or exceptional in that way. I mean, we work on exceptional problems and have exceptional jobs, but our businesses are driven a lot by many of the things that drive other businesses. And just like every other business, we're not like every other business. But that doesn't mean we can't learn some of the tools that we can't adapt some of the tools that have transformed other businesses. The second thing, insight that I've had, that I've been working on for 25 years, is the fact that I don't think people in medicine and science see management as a science. And I think that explains a lot. And I think a lot of what we have to do, we think about, oh, we have to invent it all within medicine. We don't. What we need to do is learn from, every great idea has been invented someplace else. And the most clever and the best people figure out how to adapt and use tools from one context and apply them in another. Doesn't mean that they're lock key, or that you can do it so easily, but you have to think that way and say, oh, this is a workflow problem, or oh, this is a business process problem, which is a lot of where the problems are in medicine, and in opportunities as well. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how I have envisioned, or how I think about the way medicine could be practiced and the ways in which we're going to try and get there. And I think this is this enormous opportunity for UC as a system to tackle one of the most important problems plaguing the world, and in the US in particular. And if we could do even half of what I'm thinking of, we would be responsible for transforming an industry. And I think there's no better place to do it than the University of California, because we train, the majority, we more than any other system, we have the most trainees. And you get, if you can change the mindset of the people who are going into practice and how they're trained, you will hit the tipping point. So to me, what has been missing in medicine is the ability to adapt and learn. And if you think about, so one way we're not like any other business is, if you are the CEO of Macy's or whatever, you know how many red dresses are sold in Wichita, Kansas. Although I'm told actually there isn't a Macy's in Wichita, Kansas, but it is, but wherever you happen to be. So I don't have, at the end of the day, when I get, for all the stuff that I put into my EMR, I don't have a dashboard that says, oh, here's how many people I operated on last month, here's the amount of people in my practice, in the whole UC system, or anywhere else. I never get feedback on performance. The basic concept is, it's medical practice, but what are we practicing for? We should be practicing to improve. You can't improve what you do if you don't know what you do. And last I checked, costs were a huge problem. We have no feedback on that. The time that physicians can say, oh, I'm the physician, I can't worry about costs, I have to be completely independent of that, those days are over, because the costs impact every person we take care of. Their out-of-pocket costs, the choices they make, we cannot be ignorant of that. We are, though, and somehow we have to make a change. So I want to talk to you about how we can create tomorrow's effective and affordable solutions today. So if you think about the status quo in what the problems are, the first thing is that it's all about process inefficiency. All of you guys are in IT and administration. It's all about management. So think about it from that lens, right? That, research and care are siloed. There's the research system, and there's the care system. I can't tell you how many national committees I've sat on about how we're going to transform the research system, but you come up against this big block that is the clinical care system. There's no mixing and matching. There's no reason for these two things to be siloed unless you think people are in practice, clinical practice, and don't ever have to change and improve. I think the mindset has to change to say, oh, I should not be doing the same thing tomorrow that I'm doing today. I should be thinking about every opportunity to do a better job. But how would I do that? I can't do it without feedback. This is a big shift. The current systems we have today don't help us do that. What we do is, and part of this is culture. Everybody comes in and collects the same data. Every resident, every physician, every subspecialty. In breast cancer, you may have 5 different specialists seeing a patient. Are they using the same data set? No. They're cutting and pasting and organizing this. Have we designed or organized our systems to help us change that? No. Can we? Absolutely. Because it's going to make everyone's lives better. And that's the trick. You have to have a consumer focus. And who are your consumers? Your patients and the clinicians. And we have these lengthy knowledge terms, and I'll get into that. I'm going to give you a couple of kind of detailed examples so you can see what I'm talking about. We know that healthcare costs are the largest source of personal bankruptcy. It is, we all have to own that problem. It's real. And, healthcare consumes almost 20% of GDP now. And that means that's a lack of ability to invest in education, systems that actually provide health. We have to own the problem in a bigger way and be thoughtful about it. The other problem for us is our systems have grown up where we're in the reimbursement business and not the quality business. Not intentionally, but that's just the way it is. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying that's where we are. So how do we get from here to there? And actually, every person, high healthcare costs impacts everyone. The amount of money we can pay people at UC is impacted by the cost of insurance and the cost of retiree benefits. So if we don't do something about it, that means that your salaries can't go up. Every business, one of the things that makes us uncompetitive as a country in business is the cost of healthcare, which is 3 times higher per capita than any other country in the world. And not necessarily because we deliver better outcomes, right? So who should own that problem? Who better than the University of California? And it's not, don't hide behind a rock, don't blame anyone, say, wow, here's where we are, but wow, what an incredible opportunity for us to make a change. And the other problem is that we suboptimize. And everything is so complicated in healthcare. At the end of the day, everyone says, you know, I just have to get my work done. So I'm going to build my own system that works here, and it doesn't connect with anybody else. And I'm sure you've all experienced that. And clinicians are frustrated, and they're going to like try and do their own systems. They're doing it because they're frustrated. They don't have the things that they need. They're not doing it because they're evil, you know, or trying to undermine, but they're trying to solve their problem. But their problem is everybody else's problem. It's a common problem. So we can think about it as a common problem. So, and for me in care, you know, we're over-treating some people. We're under-treating others. Some of it is because we're too enamored of our interventions. Some of them really are great, but a lot of them aren't. And a lot of them we have no data for. You know, let's be honest, right? And we shouldn't be afraid to say we want to change that and aspire to better. You know, you'll see I'm going to talk about some of the mammography debate. You know, we're arguing over data that's 40 years old. Really, that's pathetic. I'm sorry. You know, so we can change that. And, you know, if you think about all the duplicate record keeping, that means that 30 to 40% of people's time is just repeating, organizing, doing things. It's of no value. So we have to change that. So we have to improve, because the systems that we have, actually, that support clinical trials, care improvement, and biotech innovation are incredibly inefficient, and we have to improve them. So one of the big things that I'm working on with Karen DeGiorgio and Tom and Janet Napolitano is this Collaboratory to accelerate learning in medicine so that we can transform care, working with some Silicon Valley companies, trying to think about how we can build some of these systems. And it's kind of a big, hairy, audacious project, and, you know, maybe we won't succeed, but, you know, what could be more important? What could be more fun than to keep beating our heads against the wall and try? But so, you know, in trying to get rid of these inefficiencies and trying to create, for me, having this data ecosystem that really would allow real-time coordination and continual innovation in both delivery and care would be awesome. But what we need is we need it to be at the point of care. That's when decisions are being made, when you're helping people make trade-offs. You know, if our treatments were perfect and there were no side effects, this would not be necessary. But we are a long way from that. And I aspire to better. And I think all my colleagues, if they could see it, would as well. So what is it that we need? Honestly, in this order, the tool sets are absolutely important, but it's a mindset. The most important thing for us to change is the culture and the mindset, to believe that we can do this, believe that we can make a difference here. And that means skill sets. That means how we're all trained and how we all understand that we're part of an ecosystem. That's another reason why doing this at the University of California is so important, to team up with the business school. I mean, I can think of, you know, the things that I'm doing, honestly, I didn't learn in medical school. I mean, some of them I did, but I'm just saying, I mean, for organizing systems and thinking about that, that's a mindset that I got that fundamentally transformed how I think about things. But it's hard when you have that mindset and no one else has that mindset. So a lot of that's starting to change, and people are starting to recognize that. People are starting to have joint MD, MBA programs. But honestly, you know, organizational management, thinking about tool sets, thinking about IT systems, and thinking about the cost of care, this should be an integral part of medical education, and it's not yet. But we're going to change that. So first, integrate care and research. We're practicing to be better. That is, you know, no one should be allowed to practice without getting feedback on their outcomes. To me, that's rule number one. Streamlining the information and collection so that we can better treat each patient, and to do that right now. And a lot of that's about workflow. It's one of the reasons why I partnered up with Salesforce in 2009, because they're all about workflow. And this is actually a business process workflow change. That's what they've done. Working on it. Trying to figure it out. I think we're finally in a position where we can figure out how to do that. And build frameworks that can be scaled across diseases, payers, and delivery systems, so that the point of care really is the data hub, so that you can inspire and excite people about being innovators in healthcare value. Who better than the people at the front line than say, oh, you know what? I start with the data, and here's that. But you know what? And because when you personalize care, you should be tailoring treatment to biology, patient preference, and your own clinical performance. If you don't know what your clinical performance is, you can't do it there. biology we're getting much better at, and having tools to be able to really deal with the person and their value sets. The treatment's not for you, the physician's treatment's for the person. So you got to meet people where they are. But we need systems to help us do that. It could be an awesome, awesome way of practicing medicine. So we're excited about it. But everybody is a stakeholder. And all of you are perhaps the biggest drivers of change. As we come through and want to try and make these changes and think about it, we're going to need to come to you and say, how can we make this happen? How can we do things in a way that are replicable and scalable? What are the changes we can make? We're trying to be disruptive, true, but disruptive for good, right? And so there we need the administrators, the IT people to help us sort of look at the system and say, what are these right solutions so that we do it once, and then once we learn it in one place, we can do it everywhere. You know, we've learned that in Athena. I'll comment on that, you know, as we go through forward. So our proof points really have been thinking about this program, the iSpy program. I'm going to give you a little feeling for what we're doing at the Athena Breast Health Network, which has been sort of a landmark program across the 5 UCs, integrating all 5 University of California medical centers for how we treat breast cancer. And I'll tell you about one of the big projects we're taking on, because you know, some of the big issues you can't take on as one medical center, but showing the power of UC is really important. One Source Data Hub, again, working with the FDA and saying, you know, if we could collect the data once and use it many times and have these tools that everyone had access to, that would be awesome. So I'll go through, and a clinical trial matching. I mean, these are all things that everybody needs. So, you know, if you think about the benefits and the return on investment, if you had a system that really worked this way, you think about it, there are so many benefits. You know, the cost of care ought to drop because you can see what works, what doesn't work, and people will come up with better ways of saying, oh, you know, there's a reason then to think about saying, oh, well, I don't need to order a biopsy, I don't need to order this, or they had it because that's, and you can get feedback and say, you can do it, we can be the drivers of that. That's, the Affordable Care Act gives you a platform and enables these kinds of things, but it's not going to solve the problem. We actually have to do the work. We have to step up and take our profession back. All of us. It's a system. Take our systems back. You know, patients could have a better care experience. How many people have ever been a patient? How many people have enjoyed the experience of filling out forms, you know, to at least 20 times for every patient visit? How many people have had to do that? Okay, all that, I mean, why, it's 2017, people. That, we can change that. Clinicians, I can tell you as a clinician, I left clinic at 10:30 last night, documenting things, all things. I did not finish all my notes, I have to confess. I stayed till 10:30, and I said, okay, that's enough. At the end of the day, at the end of that, do I have a dashboard that gives me all the detail on what I've been doing? For all that work I've done, do I get anything for it? Hell no. But I could. And that's what's going to make change. If we think of the clinician as our customer for adopting change, how much better it could be. I would be so excited to be able to have that. So, you know, and so on and so forth. You know, you can imagine that 80% of your time is spent on stuff. You know, there was a report that came out last year about the time that the house staff spend on clinical care, 11%. The time they spend on documentation, 54%. Now, we wonder why people are burning out. It's just too onerous. But the good news for that is, for sure we can beat that. That's a low bar to beat. So I know we can do better. But you know, your CEOs, better throughput, decreasing the cost. The pharma companies, you know, we can make the system better, but we have to help drive this. You know, and philanthropists should care about it because the money they donate will go farther. You're spending, you know, 20% on overhead. I mean, every time you do a research project, you've got to hire the same people to collect all the same data. That should be done once and done right. So let me give you a couple of examples of how I've been thinking about this. And not that I've gotten it all right, because I haven't. In fact, you know, as Steve Jobs says, you learn more from your mistakes than you do from all your victories. But I've learned a lot about what works, and I've learned a lot about what doesn't work. And so I think we're ready to take on this new task. So part of, so one of my goals is, so I'm well known for being an advocate for avoiding overtreatment. But with my other hat, I've worked on trying to accelerate the pace of learning and treatment for treating the highest risk people and identifying who those people are and how to get rid of the current toxic therapies and get to more specific therapies. My model for this has been, and one of my mentors has been Andy Grove, and I think one of the things that I commend everyone to read this article from JAMA on 2007. And unfortunately, Andy Grove just passed away, but he wrote the scathing editorial in JAMA about the inefficiency of the healthcare system. And to me, he just got it. He just articulated the things that I think are so important, which is that we don't drive for early endpoints. We don't think about how to accelerate learning in medicine, these knowledge turns. And so let me give you an example of how we do it in cancer, breast cancer in specific. So if you think about what could really change the way we think about it. So any new drug coming on the market, first you test safety, that's a phase 1 trial, and then with patients with metastatic disease that spread, which by the way is incurable and we haven't cured it ever, we do a phase 2 study looking for efficacy, then a phase 3, which you're trying to find out this compared to standard, does it really work? And only then do we go into the earlier setting where we actually save people's lives, and we say, okay, let's operate on people, give them chemotherapy plus or minus this new therapy. You accrue all the patients, you wait, and then you see what happens, and then you have to get your follow-up. That's a 15-year knowledge turn. There's no way to get it shorter than that. But instead, if you said the minute you had safety, let's go to the patients who are the sickest, who are the highest risk to die. Give them, don't take the tumor out, because the tumor is your biomarker. It tells you, it's your early endpoint. Does the tumor go away? Combine with chemotherapy. Then start taking the chemotherapy away as you start finding these new drugs. And then operate on them, and that informs at the end your chance of getting accelerated approval. That's what the I-SPY trial is all about. You do follow-up, and then the drugs are on the market. And that means you could take 10 years off that knowledge turn. And that's what we're trying to go for. So thinking about our whole clinical trial process, we have to think about clinical, operational, and financing. Earlier in the course of disease, when cure is still possible, when early endpoints are out, clinical care has to change to make it easier to seamlessly accrue patients. 5% of patients go on trials. In our setting, in our site at UCSF, we have the I-SPY trial. It's a platform trial. Everyone who has high-risk disease can go on that trial. There's something for everyone. No matter how, we have an adaptive learning system. 50% of our patients in that setting go on, and with the changes we expect 75% to go on. That's how you're going to make change. Things should go at a much faster pace. So we have to have innovation in the standard of care, targeting the right drug for the right patients, and thinking about less toxicity as well as efficacy. This is important. And it has to start by thinking about who's at the center. Your patient is at the center. How do you design your clinical processes and your clinical trial processes and your operational infrastructure and the informatics and real-time data around that so everything is seamless? And then you have to build in regulatory guidance, linking the phases of trial development so you get rid of the white space and compress the timelines for learning, and get people working together to say, you know, here are the things that if everyone works together, it saves everybody money. That's the pre-competitive collaboration. What do I mean by that? When I send out a contract, and this is where having an organization outside the UC system can also help you. So we have always had an honest broker, a 501c3 foundation. First it was the Foundation for the NIH, and now it's Quantum Leap. But we say, here's the contract. There's no negotiation. Here are the rules. You play, you don't play. If you're not interested as a pharma, then we move on. And so I'm not going to waste my time on that. So that the drugs come in and out. It's one protocol. The drugs come in and out of the trial as one. And the whole idea is that you can go from 1 to 2 to 3 in the minute you know a drug is safe, you start dropping it into writing a protocol for your phase 2. The minute you know it's effective, you drop it into phase 3. So having an international trial around the world to change that. That's how you're going to make change. So again, all these things are, you know, testing agents where they matter, rapidly learning to tailor agents, optimizing success in phase 3 trials. So you're not just finding, is there any benefit, but you're picking the big winners. And you're moving those forward, and then you're using those as your backbone, and then you're changing, and then you're moving. So with this, I would say, and honestly, 5 years from now, 75% of high-risk patients won't need chemotherapy. They'll be on targeted therapy drugs. That's our goal. I think we can achieve it. And, again, thinking about organizational efficiencies, there's so many things that are wasteful. There's so much opportunity for improvement. And it's so great when it does work that way. And using a team approach. Just like in surgery, it's not about me as a surgeon. It's about the team I work with. And the same thing's true for everything, And, this is our kind of timeline. We started with really just getting everyone to do things the same so we could compare, and then we now adapt within the trial. And we're moving to saying, okay, we want to adapt within the patient. So if someone is getting a great response, they move on to the OR, they can skip the toxic therapy. And then if they aren't, that they can switch to another drug. Who wouldn't want that as a patient? That's what I want. That's what I want for my patients. So this idea of having a utility platform, drugs can drop in and graduate, highly characterized with biomarkers, these contracts rather than separate protocols, which actually are set up just for credit. Because that's how people get credit. So you change the way you get credit. I don't have drug chaperones instead of having to write the whole trial, and they can get it, and we can get a drug in 4 months instead of a year and a half. And working with the FDA, this is actually an FDA-sponsored trial, and it's open in 16 to 18 sites at any time. So getting a rapid readout, compressing your timelines, we can rapidly activate drugs. And this is just, we've had 10 drugs already go through in 4 or 5 years. If you think about colorectal cancer, there have been 2 new drugs tested in 20 years. In the last 5 years, we've had 10 drugs finish. We have 3 in the trial. We have 6 more in the pipeline. And we're doing things. We're dropping Taxol. We're doing things. We've created a culture of innovation. That's really important. I'm going to skip all this. But just to say that the biomarkers actually help us continue to refine. So this is how your science comes in and say, oh, wait a minute, I can do better than the current standard way of parsing out breast cancer. Now I can say, where you can see actually that you have 80% of patients, 80% of patients responding to this particular drug. That's the idea. And the whole idea with this regulatory endpoint is you find the drug and its surrogate, and you can get it through, demonstrate that you can replicate that endpoint. You get accelerated approval, again, 10 years earlier. And that's, let me switch that. And we have to think about how we finance drugs and think about this. And so this has been our pre-competitive consortium. And I think that we actually have to find incentives to get the right drugs to the right patients and get them for a lower cost. And there's some actually really cool ideas for how to hold pharma's feet to the fire, because Andrew Lowe's guy at MIT has actually got this idea of saying, okay, you're going to take out a loan for these expensive drugs. A lot of these drugs are like $200,000 a year. Really? How are we going to pay for that? How do we know that they work? Take out a loan. Drug works. Great. It's probably worth it. Drug stops working. You stop paying for it. It's like a house loan. That will hold people's feet to the fire. One other quick example, and this is actually in our own example. So screening is a process that's been, breast cancer screening, I'm sure everyone's seen it in the news. There was just yet another article saying that mammography is worthless. The Society for Breast Imaging has now, got this website, End the Confusion. And how are they ending the confusion? They are saying, oh, we're just going to tell people that they have to screen every year starting at age 40, while the internists are saying start at 50 and come every other year, and people are caught in the middle. So we don't know how often to screen, and it impacts everyone. And again, how do you build a sustainable infrastructure to address a critical health issue that's actually resource intensive? Because one size doesn't fit all. We don't treat people anymore as if they have one cancer. So why are we screening for it that way? That's just ridiculous. And women are caught in the middle, and some people aren't even screening at all. So we could actually base screening on all the advances in risk assessment and biology, be more effective at finding the relevant cancers, not the shoplifter cancers that aren't going to kill you, and then you overtreat people. We can integrate it with prevention. No, people don't realize this is a $10 billion a year business, probably an underestimate. So we could do better, much greater value, and we could personalize it. And I love this slide because, Janet Napolitano, who is our president, actually is someone who understands how to come up with simple, effective tools. When she was Secretary of Homeland Security, one of her big innovations was PreCheck. How many people use PreCheck? Oh my God, how many people love PreCheck? Okay, so this is this concept of let's focus on the people, our interventions on the people who should be on the no-fly list. Let's get the easy people out. Pre-check. This is South Dakota, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We actually, a part of our Athena Network includes the whole Sanford, not Stanford, Sanford Network. And Allison Fiscalini and I were going out there for a site visit. That's the size of the airport, and there's still a pre-check line. I said to Janet, that is reach. Okay. So the Athena Network, I'll tell you a little bit about that, but we came up, we really picked off this as a really important thing that we could do together, the power of UC. So women informed to screen depending on measures of risk, funded by PCORI. We created this group together because we said we wanted to facilitate the rapid integration of research advances into care. It's across the 5 University of California medical campuses. This whole idea, we have clinical care and research teams. So we are integrating care and research. We're thinking about, we have people, this is about having tools to be able to have patient-centered data, clinician-centered data on everybody who comes through. We have more than 120,000 women enrolled to date. This trial is now for something that can be open to everyone, and something where we can randomize people or put them in an observational cohort, but where we can really get at this effort to improve screening. Not talk about data that's 40 years old, but generate data that's relevant today to what we know so we can adapt over time. We've partnered with really high-quality providers who have brought down the cost of genetic testing to something that's the price of a mammogram. And in that setting, if we come together with a new idea, everyone's got a new job. And we're trying to work with the payers to say, look, you know, this is going to save you money. Step up, pay for the cost of the test, which PCORI doesn't. It's a struggle. But we are determined to succeed. But this is the paradigm in breast cancer screening that could change everything. This is, just to give you, this is our website. We've worked with Salesforce to think about optimizing the funnel. This is the kind of thing that we do. You have to learn from other industries and say, look, we want to be Silicon Valley-like in some of the things that we learn. That, you know, here's the messaging. It's simple, it's safe, it's scientific. There's no reason that anybody, and UC Care, by the way, is covering it. So any of you UC Care people should join our study. It's open now at UCSF in San Diego, and then next month it'll be for everyone. So again, trying to say that we want to move beyond current practice to learning for who's at risk for what kind of cancer, and tailor screening so it has the biggest impact. And this is a scalable and replicable problem. The same is true for cervical cancer screening, for prostate cancer screening, for lung cancer screening. These are the same issues we have to find. And we have to work in ways that we serve the public and payers can serve their constituencies. And, you know, I was just thinking that there's like, you know, all this participant engagement and trying to learn. We're trying to take these kinds of tools and learn how to scale them. Just to give you an idea of, we can do all this. People can do it from the comfort of their home. This is actually the funnel that shows up on my phone. Every morning I can get up and check the data that's going on because we've organized it in a structured, organized way. If only my clinic worked that way, but I know Adam Asar is going to make that happen for me. So we're all going to organize it so we can say, oh, you know, 35% came on. How do I organize the idea of who's invited and how do I optimize it, who's going to the randomized cohort, and so on, and having people have access to a patient portal and have us say, oh, how do we learn continuously? How does this change how we practice? So the trials should turn into a registry where we can continuously learn and monitor how we're preventing who gets a biopsy, who gets treatment, who gets screening. So I'm just going to close by saying what we need is a learning platform that uses all data on patients as a routine of care. How many of you, either yourselves or your kids or friends, play in a fantasy sports league? So if you think about the data that they all know on every single player, why don't we have that in medicine? It just drives me crazy. We can do better than that. So we need Moneyball for medicine, and there's no reason for us not to have it. Again, a patient engagement platform, a physician engagement platform, use patient-reported data efficiently, tools to enter the data once and many times. What is it? Ask the patients the data that they should know, but don't ask them a million times. Ask them once. Make it accessible for everyone. Ask the physicians for the key pieces of data that they need. And then you can automate all of these services: risk assessment, quality improvement, registry reporting, clinical research, trial matching, internal registries, the trials. Why is everyone hiring everyone to do all this data over and over and over again? This was a problem I wrote about in 1990 in business school. And guess what? We still have it. Now is our time. Now is our moment to change all this, to automate outcomes and tracking and feedback, to change everything. So good quality care, we all need the same thing. This is the concept of one source. And the FDA totally believes in this. Rob Califf, who was the FDA commissioner, maybe, might get appointed again, probably not, but awesome. He just wrote an article on national evidence generation systems. The New England Journal, like, came out December 15th. Read it. That's what we aspire to. You enter this data, everybody gets the same care. We can use it, enter once, and use many. For all these different aspects, imagine how that would transform care. Imagine how much more fun it would be to be a provider, a physician, an administrator, how much more pride you'd have in the work that you're doing. We can all do this together. We can be like other companies, like Salesforce, that are doing this in other companies and other industries. I'm tired of watching everyone else advance and us stay the same. Unacceptable. So we are going to change it. So this is our pilot phase. So we're actually trying to take the tools that we have now and turn them into scalable and replicable products. So we will be coming to you to say, okay, how do we layer on top of, it's not that we're trying to replace Epic or any of these things, but these are transactions. We've got to have systems that are fit for purpose. The transactions are fine, but we have to have things that help us think about quality improvement and cost and start to layer on and work with people. So we want to have things that go across all 5 UC medical centers, real-time monitoring and reporting, eventually bring in cost comparison, and have customized screening and prevention, all of that. So, you know, we don't want people answering the same questions over and over again. You can imagine how it can work. We know that we can make it do work. We can make sure that we're automating clinical trial matching. We can make sure that the information is verified once. This is a huge mindset. This is perhaps one of the biggest culture change, because in medicine, as an intern, I was taught, don't trust your mother. I remember in the middle of the night calling a physician. I said, well, I thought, that's it. We don't want you to think. Just call everyone else. Do it over. You know, this is, but this mindset is still there. You have to do it yourself. I can't trust a team. This is going to be a hard transition. That was the hardest transition for me in business school. They'd say, work in a team. You know, work in a study group. I'm like, who would study in a group? I'll just do it myself. I'll take call. Didn't work so well. But you know, kicking and screaming, I finally learned you had to do things in teams. My first year as a faculty member, I made people do their project as a team, and I got reported. They're making us do things together. Anyway, you know, but this is why I say mindsets, skill sets, and tool sets. I love this idea of working across UC, because I think it's something where we as a system could make the biggest difference, and we could show the way. It's about who we are. We're a public university. We're trying to solve and address big problems in the world. And for us to come together, I mean, we'll struggle. Maybe we'll miss it sometimes, but I think we'll figure out how to make a huge impact on healthcare in the United States. And I'd be so proud to be able to say that the University of California allowed us to make those kinds of changes. So that's just a little taste of what we're doing.
Laura.
So do it from here.
So, Laura, before we let you go, we had several questions come in. Most of the questions come in online through Slack for us, but you answered some of them. I'm going to ask you to just address one before we let you go. Dr. Esserman, what changes to HIPAA regulations are necessary to enable these innovations that you're looking for?
So it's an excellent question, and again, I think that's why we need the University of California scale. No one institution can do it on their own. You have to have power. That's why I like the UC-wide system. In Athena, we actually changed the way when people come in and say, you know, we didn't say, do you want to be in? We said, look, we have decided that we want to change the way that we're treating people. We want to learn from everyone we see. This is part of what they do when they come in. You sign up at the beginning. Do you want to be part of this learning system? I mean, tell us if you don't want to be part of this learning system. Click. 95% of people want to be part of this. I think part of this is not subjugating yourself to rules that got set up for the wrong reasons. It's not that I'm a rule breaker. I just object to rules that have no value and actually impede what you're doing. You know, it's like, you know, the surveys on do Americans want gun control? Do Americans believe in, birth control pills? Do they? Yes, but somehow we're like stuck in these things where people don't. Do patients want you not to learn and change and do something better? Hell no. So we can't. These rules were written for a different purpose. No, we don't want to share information about people. That's, and talk about their case to someone else. That's very different from having a system that works, that's private, that allows us to learn from every single person. And it's not that we want to take away the individual link, because here's why. If I have a trial where something goes on, I find that a hormone receptor positive breast cancer patients who's postmenopausal, that this is the new drug, I should immediately the next day be able to say, okay, every ER positive patient should be contacted to come in to change their care or to get whatever test is. If you don't link those things, you don't have a system. So I'm not going to accept the rules that were written without this in mind. We will write the new rules that are in mind. And the trick is to go directly to patients. What do you want? What are you willing to do? And, if 90% of them participate, you're done. And that's the way it's got to work. And then we rewrite the rules to make sense. Right? So we can't accept what is. We have to envision a better future and create the tools that are scalable and replicable and make a change.
Please join me in thanking Dr. Esserman for her speech today. Fantastic. All right, so a great example of innovation driving transformation in the health systems, a vision for tomorrow, technology and data playing an important role in that in Dr. Esserman's vision. When I talk about innovation, I talk to people both across the university and outside. I tend to talk about that we have 4 segments in the portfolio that innovation is happening around. I call it core tech, health tech, and you just heard a great example today, ed tech, and the 4th, and one I'm actually really excited because it's a new learning opportunity for me, is in ag tech. We have a tremendous agricultural and natural resource unit here at the university, a tremendous amount of innovation going on in that industry, but we tend to not think about it because we think of it as kind of an old school physical industry, but there's a lot of innovation happening. Gabe Yapsey, who's the CEO of A&R, also is now the Chief Innovation Officer for A&R. So just a recognition of that IT and innovation go hand in hand. And he's not going to talk here about innovation role yet because he's putting those plans together, but he is going to talk about the power of the UC working together. So Gabe, come on up and talk to us.
Well, thank you very much. Just to set the record straight, I am the Chief Innovation Officer, not the CEO. Formerly the Chief Information Officer. So I've taken on an innovation role, and to me it's a real natural evolution because I really see this confluence of technology really impacting every facet of academia, of business, and so I'm really excited to really drive innovation in a new way. But I'm not here to talk about that yet, hopefully at a future discussion, but really to talk about the power of UCIT, and I'm really happy to follow that very inspiring talk by Dr. Esserman and by Tom because it really emphasizes the point that I'm going to make. And I only have 3 slides beyond this title slide to talk about. So very brief points that I want to mention. So really, first of all, talk about when we say engagement and collaboration, I want to talk about what do we mean here. And some things that, these are coming from my perspective and the work I've done with you, with Tom, with the other CIOs, with many of you out there in UCIT and beyond. Number one is we are UCIT, and that I think we have to know that we are both a local, professional at our campus, in our department, wherever that may be, but we are also this community of 7,000 people strong here at the University of California, and we ought to be able to claim that. Second, I'm going to say we are the top IT talent in the world, and collectively, if you look at all of us together as a community, a body of professionals, We can rival any organization on the planet in terms of level of professional expertise in information technology, and it's something increasingly we ought to be leveraging that power and using that. Thirdly, we are also the technology innovators in higher education IT. There's a huge community of higher education IT professionals out there, and the University of California is consistently a leader in this area and an innovator. Something that, even pointing to UC IET Innovate, which Tom was talking about earlier, we can't innovate unless we are working together. And we have demonstrated over and over that we are more powerful when we work together. So actually that's my fifth point there. We really do our best work when we work together as a community. And we impact California, not just California, but California, a huge portion of the country, but the entire United States and the world. And lastly, what we do and our goal is that we empower each IT professional to broaden, not broader, their experience and grow their career. So we want to make sure that everyone in UCIT across the world has the opportunity to grow their professional career. And I was even seeing some notes on the Slack channel just about this, is really making sure there's opportunities for everyone across the UC system to engage in training opportunities towards innovation and growth as a community. So those are the things I think about when I think about what does it mean to engage and collaborate. We're really working towards these objectives. So some of the things that, how can you get involved? So some of these things we've already talked about. I'm just going to highlight these things. I put them up as pictures for a specific purpose, not to get into too much narrative. But if you're not already collaborating on UC Tech Slack channel, it's a great community that formed almost completely organically from the community. Tom talked about organic formation of communities. This is one of the places where that's happening. So I encourage everyone to sign on to uctech.slack.com. There's a discussion right now in the town hall channel that you can ask questions and talk, communicate on various things. Also, highlight a couple of other things. LinkedIn. There is, of course, many of you, of course, know what LinkedIn is. There's also a UCIT community on LinkedIn. I encourage you to communicate there. And UCCSC is really shaping up to be the event internal to the UC where the higher education IT leaders and professionals across the system come together, and it's promising to be bigger and better than it's ever been this year. So dates and information will come out about that soon. But I encourage everybody to attend and make the case to locally to attend these events, because the thinking, it just broadens your thinking and your connection and your networks. And we can't, achieve these big changes in innovation without one another. Nationally, EDUCAUSE is probably the single, outside the UC event for higher education IT that I'd recommend participating in. Every year it goes back and forth between the West and East Coast. This coming year it'll be in Philadelphia. Highly encourage you to propose a session, write a paper, get on a committee. There's so much work to be done, and the UCIT is really well poised to really make a huge impact on the national scene through EDUCAUSE. UCIT blog, just give a shout out for that as well. That is the place where you can get information currently in kind of a website format about the events and activities that are happening in UCIT across the system. So, and finally, I wanted to mention the UC ITLC, the IT Leadership Council, and there's a tremendous focus on creating really great outcomes as a system in UCIT. And there's going to be a ton of opportunity this coming year to work on committees and to get engaged to do meaningful work and on projects that really move the needle for the work that we all do in the coming year. So I highly encourage you, as you see those opportunities come up, as calls for those come out on your local campuses, please jump in and get engaged, or reach out to your fellow IT professionals in your network on your campus to get involved with those. So just a couple of things on what's coming before I conclude. There's a new UCIT portal that's coming. We're in the works. That's really going to sew together all these things, and it's really going to be a way to connect you as UCIT professionals using these established channels, but also really to demonstrate the power of UCIT to the world in a more effective way. And so that'll be coming online this year. We're looking at really making permanent that kind of paid version of UC Tech Slack team. So we've got UC Tech Slack team now. The goal is that we have this cross-UC system team that will be available for all UCIT professionals kind of on a permanent basis, and can integrate it with all your tools and use it for your local campus collaboration. Also, as I mentioned, UCCSC 2017, highly recommend you make plans to attend. Already mentioned the many different UC-wide opportunities to get involved. EDUCAUSE is coming up in Philadelphia, and always want more slacking on uctech.slack.com. So I'll end there. Thank you very much, and look forward to continuing increased engagement across UCIT.
Gabe, thank you. Okay, so we're a few minutes over, so we're not going to take any questions. So, and we do have some questions that came through the Slack channel. We're going to respond to them offline. I just want to close today by, first of all, thanking our speakers today, Laura and Gabe. Thank you so much for very, very kind of engaging and inspiring and thought-provoking concepts for us. I want to, kind of build up on what Gabe says, right? I mean, we're doing things from a collaboration perspective at a scale that we really haven't seen here before in the UC. I mean, UCCSC this year, I think you might have mentioned it. We're going to probably double the size of that event from people participating than we ever have before. And every year we're trying to make it a little bit bigger and a little bit better and a little bit more inclusive. And so it just shows you that we're riding this scale up. I think speakers like Laura give us the opportunity to say, the only thing that limits what we might be able to do is our own thinking and our own mental models that have been planted into us, and sometimes even decades ago. So as you go off, as you look at what you do at this university in terms of who you support and how you contribute, think about breaking outside of those models. That's exactly why here at the Office of the President we decided to have an Innovation Week, to give people the opportunity to get outside that box, to say it's okay. Go think, go create. We've been running little workshops with exercises to kind of warm people up to the idea. We encourage you to talk at a local level about simple things, because those type of exercises stretch those muscles. In some cases, they're just not emphasized enough, just like anything else. The more you stretch them, the stronger they get. The stronger they get, the more value I think that we provide to our community. So with that, I want to close for today. Laura's got a closing comment. We always got to, absolutely.
All your questions and send them back.
We will absolutely take you up on that offer. Thank you.
Start the conversation and think about again, innovation starts with engagement, right? And empowerment. We can all make a difference. So if you have ideas, we are all ears and we want to hear about them.
Great. Thank you very much. And on that note, thank you. Have a great 2017. Looking forward to it.